everybody, I'm on my way home from Petco, and while we're in a bright patch of sun, I'm going to take a moment to forewarn you we're about to have a lot of flickering, flashing lights as we drive into the woods, so here it comes. Coming home from Petco today, and I wanted to talk about the cleanliness of the fish tanks that were in there, because they were clearly in the process of cleaning all their tanks, and they had only gotten a certain amount of the tanks done, and you could see where they stopped. And the tanks were surprisingly covered in green algae. It almost looked like that green cyanobacteria that I get in my tanks a lot of times. And I found that to be kind of interesting, and I think it's worth having a chat about. When I first started keeping fish, I saw like the mom and pop shops that had like a sponge filter in the tank, and you could see what I now understand to be a patina in the tank, you know, showing that it's a good, healthy, lived-in tank with a good, healthy culture in the tank and everything. I saw those tanks when I first started keeping fish. I saw them as being like dirty, and you know, people weren't keeping on top of their maintenance or whatever. And I'd go into places like PetSmart or Petco, and Petco in particular, that's why I bring this up. Petco had sparkling tanks. I mean, it looked like every hour somebody got in there with a toothbrush and scrubbed everything down. They sparkled. And as I learned more and as I, grew in the hobby, I began to realize that that's not necessarily healthy. And more often than not, it's not healthy to keep fish in that kind of environment. Of course, remember, a pet store is not your home aquarium. A pet store is basically a spot on the shelf in a department store or a grocery store. You know, these are living animals, so their spot on the shelf has to be made out of water, and it has to have, oxygen and all that. But it's not where they're meant to live. It's not their normal habitat or normal environment. If you look behind the scenes, they've got massive filtration systems, and so they don't have to rely as heavily on a patina in the tank and the life in the tank actually helping to support the biological function of the tank. They've got all that stuff going on behind the scenes, and they can get away with having these tanks really, really super clean like that. But just because it's super clean like that, that's no indication whatsoever of the quality of the store, the quality of the stock, the knowledge of the employees, or anything like that. All it means is that they're meticulous about keeping their tanks nice and sparkly clean, because that's merchandise. It'd be like going to a car dealer and not seeing cars with like a high polish, shiny, and the wheels all nice and done. You want your products to look really nice when you're selling them, and that's why the fish store tanks look the way they do. And one of the things that I found most interesting, and again, I don't really have a whole lot of point to this, just sort of food for thought, throwing it out there. And I do want to, certainly put the information out there that if you're new to the hobby, then don't necessarily gauge the quality of a store by the cleanliness of their tanks. I guess if I had to make any point in this video, that would be the point, is you can't judge the quality of a store based on how sparkly their tanks are. But I find it interesting that in a store like Petco, where we just came from, it seems as though just days without maintenance results in a significant amount of green growth developing in the tank. Not only did the substrate on the bottom have, as opposed to the substrate on the top, the substrate had just green growth all over it. And what I found really interesting was in the front glass, you could see almost this like fern-like splayed out pattern of growth. And I almost thought it was like tendrils of moss or something when I first glanced at it. And what I realized it's where the spray bar or the spray nozzle in the back is shooting straight out, and it's hitting the front glass. And you can now see the diffusion pattern where the water flows off the front glass, because it's got algae growing in this sort of blown out pattern across the front glass. And I just find it amazing at how much algae they got that quickly. I know their tanks are really, really brightly lit. Again, it's merchandise that they're trying to sell, so they want it to look good. But how much nitrates must they have in their water? I really kind of probably should have bought something in there just so I could have brought him a bag of the water to find out what was going on with it. Because I've tested water from the PetSmart and the Petco before. Sometimes it's been 40 or 50 parts per million. Sometimes it's been under 10. So that's kind of hit or miss. But you just can't judge the quality of a fish store based on how sparkly and clean the tanks are. Again, in most cases, that's not desirable. And in your home aquarium, it's probably not desirable either. You want to let a patina develop in the tank, and you don't want to disturb the gravel bed as much as possible, and you want to let stuff grow on the rocks, especially the underside of the rocks where you don't necessarily see it as much. And that's all part of a good, healthy, living fish tank. If your preference is having a sparkly, clean tank and you like getting in there and cleaning it up like that all the time, then that's your prerogative. It's your tank, and you should certainly keep it the way you enjoy keeping it. But I personally don't think that that looks appealing. I don't think that looks natural. You know, I like my fish tanks to look like natural environments, and I never see natural environments that don't have stuff in them. They've got algae, and they've got, you know, most of the time they've got mud and bugs and little squiggly things and all kinds of weird green growth and weeds and, you know, everything else. So I try to keep it reasonable, you know, but I still like it to look natural. And those tanks that are just sparkly and shiny all the time just do not look natural to me. So that's my 2 cents on that. We're coming down the road here. We're on my street. Got about a half block to go and we'll be turning into my driveway. So I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe. You never know what you're going to get with me. Hope you enjoyed that one. And I'll see you real soon in the next one.